She walked in with blood on her hands. The ring was gone. The baby shoes were still on the counter. Then the phone rang, and the voice on the other end wasn't his. I'm not proud of what happened, but I don't know how else to tell this. My name's Daniel, and up until a month ago, I thought I had it all: a wife, a home, a life that looked picture perfect. But life has a funny way of tearing everything apart when you least expect it. And I've learned the hard way that you can't keep pushing things to the edge without it all crumbling down around you. I'm 29. My wife, Maria, is 28. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. Everything had always seemed to work out. We had the kind of love people envy, at least that's what I thought. Maria's the outgoing, social type, always surrounded by friends, always at some party or event. I'm the quieter one, the guy who likes to stay home, watch movies, read, and just keep things low-key. But we made it work. I supported her. She supported me. We were partners in everything. Or so I thought. Over time, I noticed the shift. It wasn't immediate. Small things, like her being gone more often or the conversations becoming shorter. Then, one night, I came home from work late, one of those long shifts where you don't get a break, and found the house empty, save for the soft hum of the TV. Maria had left a note, went out with friends, be back soon. I didn't think much of it. She needed her time, her space. I get it. But something felt different. I started to notice how much she was going out, how she seemed to always be at someone's party or at a bar, and it hit me, I was the last person on her mind. So I did what any guy in my position would do. I stepped up. I started doing more, being more thoughtful, more present. I'd surprise her with little things, try to plan spontaneous dates, take her out to nice places, even though I could tell she didn't really care. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Her laughter didn't sound the same. I kept telling myself she was just tired, stressed, maybe even going through a phase. But deep down, I knew I was losing her. The tipping point came one night at a neighborhood barbecue. Maria had invited some of her friends, and I went along, as I always did. She was in her element, laughing, chatting, the center of attention, as usual. I stayed in the background, as I always did, but that night, something felt off. I wasn't used to being the invisible one. I was the guy who'd always been there for her. I'd never expected her to outgrow me. But she did. As the evening wore on, I heard snippets of the conversation between her and her friends. At first, it was just talk about the food, the weather, the usual small talk. But then, I caught one of them say, "You've got him wrapped around your finger. He'll do anything for you." And the laughter that followed. Maria's laughter. I wasn't stupid. I knew what they were implying. They were making fun of me, of us, of the man I had become. The quiet, obedient husband who couldn't keep up with his wife's social life. And I hated it. But I didn't say anything. I stayed silent. For too long, I had been too accommodating, too passive, always the one who forgave. That night, when we got home, it was like something inside me snapped. Maria didn't even notice the change in my demeanor. She was too busy texting one of her friends, her face lit up by the glow of her phone, completely unaware of what had just happened. I sat on the couch, fists clenched, seething in silence. She had no idea how much it was all affecting me. The next morning, she asked if I was okay. I just nodded. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her how I felt, but the words wouldn't come out. How had I let it get this bad? How had I let her walk all over me? I should have known better. I should have stood up for myself. A few days later, I found out how far gone we were. Maria had come home late, again, and I was waiting for her in the living room. She walked in, took one look at me, and sighed. "Why are you still awake?" she asked, rolling her eyes. "It's just a few drinks with friends. I'm not doing anything wrong." But her tone was dismissive, and that's when I knew. She didn't care anymore. "Maria, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, but it felt like a struggle. "I can't keep doing this." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I can't keep being this guy, the one who just sits back and lets you treat me like this," I said. "You don't respect me anymore. You don't even look at me the same way." She was quiet for a moment, and then, without any emotion, she said, "I don't know what you want me to say, Daniel. You knew I was always like this. You knew what you were getting into when we got together. That was it. The final blow. The cold, calculated truth that she had been waiting for an excuse to leave. I had been blind to it for so long, but I could see it clearly now. "You're right," I said. "I should have never let it get this far." She blinked, surprised, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes, relief, maybe, before she turned and walked out of the room without another word. I sat there for a while, the weight of her indifference crushing me. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The days after that conversation felt like a blur. It was like I was floating through my own life, just going through the motions, but never really living it. Maria and I spoke less and less, each interaction a thinly veiled attempt to avoid the inevitable. I couldn't escape the weight of what had happened. My thoughts kept circling back to her words, "You knew what you were getting into when we got together." And that's when it hit me, the ugly truth. I had been the one who let it get this far. I had allowed myself to become the man she mocked, the man who just took it all. I had loved her so much that I thought, maybe if I kept bending over backwards, if I kept giving her everything, she'd see me the way I wanted her to. But it didn't work that way, did it? I was done being that guy. But I had no idea where to start. Then, one evening, things reached a boiling point. It was a Friday night. Maria had been gone again, out with her friends, leaving me at home, stewing in my thoughts. I had tried to fill the silence with distractions, TV, work emails, even cleaning the house, but nothing seemed to drown out the growing sense of frustration in my chest. I was sick of this, sick of pretending everything was fine. She came home around 2 a.m., laughing a little too loud, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I was sitting in the kitchen, nursing a glass of whiskey, staring into space. When she walked in, she smiled like everything was normal, like she wasn't the one who had been stringing me along. "Hey, babe. You okay?" she asked, though her voice was more of a nonchalant greeting than actual concern. I stood up slowly, setting the glass down on the counter. "No, Maria. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time." Her smile faltered, but she didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it definitely wasn't this cold silence. "I'm tired, Maria. I'm tired of always being the one who makes excuses for you. I'm tired of feeling like I don't matter to you. You haven't looked at me the same way in months," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You've been gone so much, I don't even know who you are anymore." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Are we seriously having this conversation right now? It's just a night out with friends. You need to get a grip. You act like I've been cheating on you or something." Her words hit me like a slap in the face, but it wasn't the kind of slap that stung. It was the kind that made me realize how completely out of touch we had become. "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's not just that. It's the constant disrespect, the ignoring, the way you make fun of me behind my back." I took a step forward. "I can't be the guy who just keeps pretending everything is fine. I'm done, Maria." She blinked, surprised, but quickly recovered. "What do you mean you're done? What's this? Some sort of ultimatum?" "Exactly," I said, surprising myself. "I can't keep doing this. I'm done being the guy who bends to your will, the guy who lets you walk all over him, the guy who just exists in the background of your life." Her eyes widened as the realization hit her. For a brief second, I saw something, fear, maybe? But it quickly turned to anger. "You think I've been walking all over you? You think this is all my fault?" she said, her voice rising. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "It's your fault for not seeing me anymore. For choosing everything else over our marriage. For treating me like I'm some joke. But it's my fault for letting you. And I'm not doing it anymore." Her jaw clenched, and I saw her fists ball up at her sides. "You really want to do this now? You want to call me out like this?" "I do," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "Because I deserve better. And so do you. But this, whatever this is, has to end." For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't scared. I wasn't afraid of losing her, or of what came next. I just knew it was time. Maria stood there, staring at me, her face red with anger, and for a moment, I thought she might yell at me, or maybe even slap me, but she didn't. She just shook her head. "You've really lost it, haven't you?" she muttered, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You're throwing everything away over nothing." "This isn't nothing, Maria," I said, my voice low but firm. "This is everything." And with that, I saw the shift in her. The anger in her eyes softened, but it wasn't a look of relief. It was something darker, something I couldn't quite read. "I'm leaving," she finally said, her voice cold and final. "I'm going to stay with Tina. We'll figure things out. You'll get your things." I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. I was done trying to fix something that was beyond saving. This wasn't just about her. It was about me. I needed to take back my life. Maria turned and walked out of the room without another word, leaving me standing there alone, the sound of her heels echoing in the empty house. The silence in the house felt suffocating after Maria walked out. It wasn't just the emptiness of her absence, but the realization that I had let her slip away without ever really standing up for myself. Now, she was gone. And all I was left with was this bitter taste of my own failure. I sat there for hours after she left. The house, once full of laughter and noise, now felt like a tomb. I didn't even want to sleep. Every corner, every object, felt like a reminder of what we had lost. I picked up my phone and stared at it, but I didn't have the strength to call anyone. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I just lost my wife, and now I'm in this weird, empty place wondering if I'll ever be whole again? No. I just put the phone down and buried my face in my hands. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how truly alone I was. The sun had barely risen when I heard a knock at the door. My heart jumped. Maybe it was her. Maybe she'd come back to apologize, to admit that she was wrong. But when I opened the door, I found Lucas, my neighbor, standing there. Hey, man, I heard what happened, Lucas said, his voice uncertain. I just wanted to check on you. I stepped aside to let him in. It was clear from his expression that he didn't know how to handle the situation. He wasn't exactly a close friend, but we'd had enough late-night chats over beers to know each other well enough. Thanks, Lucas, I said, trying to sound more put together than I felt. I don't know what to do right now. He gave me a sympathetic look and sat down on the couch. Well, you're not alone in this, man. You've got people who care about you. Maybe not your wife right now, but you've got us. I let out a long sigh. That's the problem, Lucas. I'm so tired of being that guy, the one who keeps apologizing, the one who's always trying to keep things together while she does whatever she wants. Lucas nodded, clearly understanding the frustration in my voice. He paused for a moment before speaking. You know, I've seen it before. Some people just drain the life out of you. They take, and you give until you've got nothing left. Then they walk away. I swallowed hard. I let it happen. I let her walk all over me. I thought if I just loved her enough, if I just kept giving, it would fix everything. But now look at me. She's gone, and I'm left wondering if it was all even worth it. Lucas looked at me with a knowing expression. I get it, man. You're not the first guy to lose himself in a relationship like that. But you're still here. You're still breathing. And that means it's not over. You've still got time to fix things for yourself. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But it was hard to ignore the gnawing doubt that had settled deep inside me. Maria wasn't coming back. I knew that now. And I didn't know how to pick up the pieces of my life when the person I had once trusted with everything had shattered it so completely. Later that day, I decided to take a walk. I needed to clear my head. The weather was nice, so I grabbed my jacket and headed out, my feet carrying me aimlessly through the streets. I passed by the park where we used to go on weekend walks. Maria would laugh, telling me how she always hated the boring walks, but would go along with it anyway because she knew it made me happy. I'm such an idiot, I thought. Why did I let her drag me into her world of chaos? I stopped at the corner of the street, staring at the familiar landmarks, the cafe where we had our first date, the store we used to walk by on our way home, the bench where we had sat for hours talking about our future. And now I was alone. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. It was a message from Maria. My heart skipped a beat as I read the text. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. The words felt like a slap in the face. She had left me, walked away without a second glance, and now she was texting me, asking to talk? What was there left to say? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The anger that had been simmering inside me for days surged to the surface. This wasn't an apology. It was her way of making sure I didn't forget about her, making sure I was still an option when she decided she needed to feel validated again. Not this time, I thought, feeling a surge of clarity. I'm done. She had her chance. Now it's time for me to take mine. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her number and walked away, determined not to let her pull me back into her toxic web. The next few days were a blur. I packed up my things, moved out of the house, and took temporary refuge at a friend's apartment. It was far from ideal, but I needed the space. The first night alone, the silence in the room felt suffocating, but at the same time, there was a strange sense of relief. I had finally done something for myself. And that felt like a small victory. Maria didn't contact me again. Not for a while. I started focusing on myself, on rebuilding the parts of me that had been buried under her weight. I took up hobbies I had forgotten about, worked out again, and spent time with the friends who had stuck by me. But the loneliness still lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. I missed the idea of her, of the life I thought we would have. But I didn't miss her. A week had passed since I left the house, and things were, well, they were better. Not by much, but there was something about being away from Maria that made me feel a little lighter. It wasn't like I was celebrating being free, but I could finally think without the constant hum of doubt and guilt that had been echoing in my mind for so long. I wasn't the man I used to be, the one who quietly took it all, hoping for some miracle to fix everything. But I had changed. And though I wasn't sure exactly who I was becoming, I knew I was on the right path. I'd spent most of that week figuring out the logistics of my life. I started looking for an apartment of my own, a space where I wouldn't constantly see reminders of what I had lost. I started looking for work as well. A job, something to give me focus and a sense of purpose. It wasn't easy. It felt like starting over from scratch, but I needed to. The alternative was slipping back into the toxic habits that had brought me here in the first place. And then, just when I thought things were calming down, Maria showed up at the apartment unannounced. It was a Saturday morning. I was still in bed, trying to catch up on sleep after a long week of job applications, when I heard a knock at the door. At first, I figured it was a delivery, or maybe Lucas, checking in to see how I was holding up. But when I opened the door, I saw Maria standing there, looking like she had just walked out of one of her old parties, hair perfectly done, that fake smile plastered on her face. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "Can we talk?" I froze for a moment, every muscle in my body screaming at me to shut the door, to walk away. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside and let her in, trying to ignore the storm of emotions brewing inside me. "I didn't think you'd come back," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "What's this about, Maria?" She walked into the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "I know I've been a mess. But I've been thinking about everything. About us." I let out a bitter laugh. "Really? Now you want to talk? After everything that's happened?" Maria winced at my words, but she didn't back down. "I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. I was selfish. And I know I hurt you. But I don't want to lose you." Her words felt like a punch to the gut. The woman who had mocked me, dismissed me, and made me feel invisible was now standing in front of me, acting like nothing had happened, like I was just supposed to forget everything she had done. But that wasn't who I was anymore. "I'm not sure you get it, Maria," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm done pretending like I'm the one who messed this up. You've disrespected me for so long, and now you think an apology is going to fix everything?" She looked at me, her eyes wide, like she didn't understand why I wasn't falling at her feet. "Please, Daniel. I know I made mistakes. But I've changed. I've been working on myself. I need you to give me a chance." My mind raced. The old me, the one who had been so desperate to please her, would have fallen for it. I would have believed her. But I wasn't that guy anymore. "I don't think I can just go back to the way things were," I said, my voice steady. "You don't just get to waltz back into my life and act like nothing happened. You don't get to treat me like I'm your backup plan." Maria's face twisted with frustration. "It's not like that. You're the one I want. You always have been." "But I..." "Stop," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the one who waits for you to come around. You had your chance. And I'm not going to be your second choice." She stood there, stunned, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for the right words. But there were no right words. "Not anymore." "I'm sorry, Daniel," she said finally, her voice small. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said, my heart heavy. "But that doesn't change anything." And with that, she turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving me standing there, numb. For a few moments, I just stood there, staring at the door. The weight of her words, of her presence, lingered in the air like a bad smell I couldn't get rid of. But deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. I couldn't go back to that life, to that version of me who had been a shadow in my own marriage. I had to move forward. The next few days were a blur of emotional exhaustion and quiet reflection. Maria didn't reach out again. I think, deep down, she knew that was the end. I had made my decision, and there was no going back. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into the same toxic cycle. But something strange happened during that time. I started to feel free. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for the next round of disappointment. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. And then, out of nowhere, I got a message from one of my old friends, David. We hadn't spoken in months ever since the whole Maria situation had started to unravel. But when I opened the message, I wasn't expecting what I found. "Hey, man. I know things are tough right now. But you've always been there for me. I'm here if you need to talk. We should catch up soon." I read his message twice, unsure of what to think. David wasn't the kind of guy who reached out unless he really meant it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't as alone as I had thought. I replied back, "Thanks, David. I could really use someone to talk to. The next few weeks passed by in a haze of work, fleeting moments of reflection, and the awkward adjustments of living alone for the first time in years. It felt both suffocating and liberating, like breathing air for the first time after being submerged underwater for too long. I was adjusting, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something else was just around the corner. David, as it turned out, wasn't just reaching out to talk. He had been watching from the sidelines for a while, and he had his own take on the situation. We met at a local cafe, one of the few places I had started to frequent since moving into the apartment. He sat across from me, his usual easy grin replaced by a more serious expression. "I'm glad you called, man," I said, stirring my coffee. "It's been rough." David nodded. "Yeah, I can imagine. But I think it's time to look at the bigger picture, you know? You've been stuck on Maria for too long." I blinked, taken aback by his directness. "What do you mean?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You need to stop letting her take up space in your head. She's gone. And frankly, from everything you've told me, you've been holding on to a version of her that doesn't exist anymore. You're looking at the past and ignoring what's right in front of you." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. I had been looking at the past, hadn't I? It was hard to let go of what Maria and I had been. It wasn't just about the loss of her, it was about the loss of the life I thought we would have together. "David, I don't know how to just forget her. She was everything to me." My voice wavered despite myself. David gave a wry smile. "She was. But she's not anymore. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can move on. You deserve better, man." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. Not because I didn't know it deep down, but because I hadn't been ready to hear them. I wasn't sure I would ever be ready. I sat back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. "You think I can really move on? Like, actually move on?" David's gaze softened. "I know you can. I've seen you go through worse. But it's gonna take time. You've got to let yourself heal. You've got to stop being your own worst enemy." I looked out the window, watching people walk by, their lives moving in sync while I was still stuck. I didn't know if I was ready to heal, but David was right about one thing: I couldn't keep holding on. It wasn't just hurting me anymore. It was hurting my future. We talked for a little while longer, and I left the cafe feeling a bit lighter. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like there was hope. It wasn't about getting over Maria, not yet, but it was about finding a way forward. That's all I could do now, move forward. A few days later, as I was sitting at home, zoning out while trying to catch up on some paperwork, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, half expecting it to be one of my neighbors or maybe another delivery, but instead, I found someone I never thought I'd see again. It was Maria. She stood there, her posture stiff and uncertain, like she was waiting for me to react. I didn't know what to feel. A part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to be done with her for good. But another part of me was still holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she had changed. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft, almost pleading. I sighed. The last time we talked, I had made it clear I wasn't going to fall for her games anymore. I wasn't going to be that guy again. But despite everything, I still found myself nodding and stepping aside to let her in. We sat down in the living room, the space between us feeling awkward and thick. I crossed my arms, waiting for her to speak. "I know I've hurt you," she began, her voice wavering. "I know I've done things that can't be undone. But I've been thinking, and I realized how wrong I was. I didn't appreciate you, Daniel. And now I see what I've lost." I listened to her, but I didn't feel the same rush of emotions that I used to. This wasn't the woman I had married. This was someone else, someone who had betrayed me and walked away without a second thought. "I don't know what you expect from me, Maria," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not the same person anymore. You've already made your choice. And I've made mine. I'm not going back to what we were." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I don't expect you to forgive me, not right away. But I want you to know that I've changed. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry." I stared at her for a long time, the weight of her apologies sinking in. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. "Maria, I've learned something in the last few weeks," I said, my voice steady. "I've learned that I don't need your apology to move on. I don't need your validation. I need to be the person I was before you walked into my life. I need to rebuild what I lost in myself." She looked at me, the hurt in her eyes almost palpable, but I didn't flinch. "I wish you the best, Maria. But I'm not the guy I was before. And I'm not going to keep waiting for something that isn't coming." With that, she stood up, silent. For a moment, I thought she might say something more, but she didn't. She just laughed. No drama, no grand gestures. Just the sound of her footsteps fading into the hallway. I didn't watch her leave. I stayed where I was, sitting on the couch, letting the silence settle around me. This was it. It was over. For good this time. And as the evening wore on, I realized something important. I was going to be okay. I didn't need Maria. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I had to do that for myself. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control of my life again.